Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inner Power Training once again. And today, Kevin and I, you've met him before if you've been watching my videos, Kevin Fitzgerald, and I are going to be talking about spiritual awakening. And we're sponsored by LifeWave Patches, a company that put out these amazing, non-invasive, but very effective patches that stimulate your DNA and your stem cells and make you feel better and everything. We'll talk a little more about that at the end of the video, so stay with us. But Kevin and I have both had our own spiritual awakenings. We're both people who have been on the path, and we're going to share with you some of the information about what's happened to us, because I love to read stories about other people who have had similar experiences. It's always very interesting and uplifting to hear what people go through. So I'll let you take over, Kevin, and why don't you tell us?
Thanks, Rebecca. You know, we live in a time of mass spiritual awakening. You know, I really believe we're at a crossroads with humanity. And so I personally went through my spiritual awakening back in 2001. And with a spiritual awakening, well, first, we're taught by this world how to make a self, right? The ego tells us, okay, you got to go out and succeed. So you got to be a good husband. You got to make a lot of money. You have to have a career. You have to do this, that, or the other thing. And a lot of times when someone has like a midlife crisis, what they're really doing is their soul is saying, look, you've been spending half your life making a self. It's now time for you to remember your authentic self. So that's the basis for a spiritual awakening. And what usually triggers that is a crisis, either a crisis in your health, a crisis in your marriage, which was my situation, or a crisis, financial crisis, or a combination. Because when everything is good on the outside, people don't look within. Only when things get really rough on the outside through a crisis of some sort, then people go, wait a minute, you know, I gotta turn within, right? So that's the spiritual awakening. And in essence, what does awakening mean? Awakening means that you're shifting your identity from being ego outward focused to getting into alignment with your authentic divine I am self, and then expressing that from the inside out, which means you realize that love is your essence. So you're no longer looking for love on the outside anymore. You're doing the inner marriage, so to speak, and then you will express that wholeness with a potential partner on the outside. That's a holy relationship. You know, that's why a lot of relationships struggle, right? Because people think that other person completes you. And then when a relationship, you know, deteriorates or there's divorce or whatever, one partner is no longer attracted to the other partner because they feel that partner's not meeting their needs. So when you go within, you realize it's love that makes you whole or holy. Then you can express it with another partner, or you might express it by yourself. You don't actually have to express it with a partner because you know yourself as whole and complete.
Exactly. Now, let me ask you this. When you went through this experience of divorce that awakened you, did you go through a dark night of the soul period before or after?
Well, my whole marriage was a dark night of the soul, meaning, you know, so I married at 33 years of age, and I was ready to get married. My wife at the time was not. So I worked really hard to become a millionaire. I had an $8 million a year travel business. You know, on the outside looking in, people would say, wow, you're really successful, right? Lived in $1.5 million home. My wife didn't have to work. I thought I was doing a good job as a husband, but my wife was not happy. And our verbal fighting was unbearable. I mean, unbearable. I mean, it was almost 10 years of it. And it ultimately brought me to my knees, where I walked outside and said, God, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. There's nothing I can do to make my wife happy. See, I didn't understand what esoteric knowledge was. I didn't understand anything about the soul. I didn't understand anything about, if you want to call it metaphysics. And then I had a 3-day epiphany. And in that 3 days, I was downloaded with information that changed my life. And I'm an Aries. So when something like that happens, I'm not the type to bury my head in the sand and not tell anyone about it. I'm like, holy mackerel, that was otherworldly, supernatural. I need to explore this, right? So I went on and I'm still on it this day, a journey of self-discovery that is culminated in, I divorced. Well, my wife really divorced me, but we're great friends, right? We didn't get divorced where it was mean or nasty. I had been on the journey for about 3 years before we got divorced. And so, the energy of true love was there. And I always tell people, I wanted my wife happy, even if that wasn't with me. When you truly love somebody, it's not about possession. It's not about ownership. It's about, you want that person to have a great life. Even if that's with somebody else, right? Because that's what love is. It's unselfish.
And unconditional. Exactly.
Yeah, it's unconditional.
Conditional love always has rules that you have to follow, and that makes people miserable.
Well, unconditional love is false love. It's not true love.
Conditional love.
Conditional love. Conditional love is false love.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was very interesting that it was a divorce that took you to that awakening level of consciousness, where you saw everything in a different light. And did you find that it changed your abilities, your character, the way you viewed everything after that?
Absolutely. My life completely changed.
Right.
I mean, 100%. That's when I started. I went from a normal travel agency to start doing sacred journeys. I probably read 500 spiritual books. That's what turned me on to A Course in Miracles. And I'm still on that journey today.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, I had my own awakening came, but it came in the form of having to confront a very bad diagnosis, which I've talked about on my videos. And I was up against the wall, just like you were up against the wall with your marriage. When you're in that and you surrendered, that's always the key point in these spiritual awakenings that people have. They surrender. Many times they have to do it by literally dying and having a near-death experience, but you don't really have to die. You just have to die to your ego.
Right. Exactly.
And thinking that you can figure it out when you really can't, because the solution is supernatural. It's handing it over to the higher power.
Yeah, because we're trained in our life to control our lives, right? That's what worry is. Worry is when you're trying to control the future and you're not sure how to control it, so you worry, right? And that energy will lower your vibration and make you sick. Because it causes stress and it releases, huge amounts of cortisol. So the ego wants to control everything, right? But spirit is always about, no, for you to find your way home, it is your higher self that knows how to bring you there the fastest. So surrender and go for the ride, right? Meaning stop swimming against the current, go with the current. So swimming against the current is trying to control your life. When you start to spiritually awaken, you let go and you flow, right? And then you're in the energy of grace instead of the energy of karma.
Well, and that's when things just seem to show up. Whenever I've been faced with, like after I retired from my flying career, I didn't want to stop working because I was only in my 50s. And which sounds really young to me, right? But when I finally surrendered, it took 1.5 years. And finally, I said to God, I give up. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I apply for jobs and nobody hires me, even though they tell me they're going to. And I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. And then I surrendered. And the perfect thing for me showed up, which was being a trainer with the Silver Ultramind. And I traveled around the country for 5 years giving seminars. And now, how did you happen to attract or transition into your travel business being, more on the path of enlightenment? How did you plan it, or did it just show up for you?
I'll tell you. So I had that epiphany for 3 days, and I started to explore all kinds of books. And I was really attracted to Edgar Casey's work.
Oh, I love him. Wasn't he fascinating?
Great, great. I even went to the ARE just to check it out, which is the Association of
Research,
Enlightenment. That's
Right.
Research and Enlightenment. Yeah, and that's how I got involved with David Woodcock, because that book about him being the reincarnation of Edgar Casey. And so I reached out to David and I said, hey, I just reached out to him in the blue. I'd never met him. I just sent him an email. And I said, hey, my name's Kevin Fitzgerald, and I'm a fan of your work, blah, blah, blah. How would you like to do some group travel? And he said, I'd love to. And he was going on Coast to Coast that night that I reached out to him. He said, look, give me the details and I'll promote it on Coast to Coast. And I was like, okay. And my first sacred journey was a trip with David to a cruise to the Caribbean called, the theme of it was Healing the Atlantean Wound. And that's how I transitioned.
Very nice. And you did it for quite a few years.
I did sacred journeys for about 10 years. Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting that you talk about those 3 days. When I had a spiritual awakening with a spontaneous healing back in the 70s, for 3 days, I was living in that altered state of consciousness where I wasn't really in the 3D world anymore. I was in the higher realm of what you call, I guess, the Christ consciousness. They call it the 5th dimension now. And wow, that was really interesting, that everything in the 3-dimensional world just seemed beautiful in nature, but with the humans I had to continue to deal with, it was very difficult. And a lot of people have that problem when they wake up, dealing with friends and family members. I get a lot of comments about that once you have an awakening and nobody wants to hear about it.
Well, that's where surrender comes in, because a lot of times when you have an awakening, you want to share it with the people closest to you.
Right.
But ultimately, people have to go on their own journey. And the best thing you can do for people is just exemplify what it means to have that spiritual knowledge and being implementing it in your life, mostly by being peaceful. Because people will look at you when you're peaceful, especially when things are going on around you that normally would trigger you. Then they'll say, why are you're different? Where's this peace coming from? Because everyone wants peace of mind. Everyone wants peace in their lives. And so when you're on this journey, one of the biggest results of the journey is peace. And people, everyone wants that, right? Because you're healthier when you're peaceful, because you're not stressful. And when people attack you or trigger you, you're not reactionary. You're like, you allow them to do that. And so when you allow people to do that to you, you're not giving your power over to them. If you were still trying to control your life from the ego and people would project on you or trigger you, most of us react. We get angry, we're vengeful, we want to return that energy of attack to them, whether it's a verbal attack or physical attack. So ultimately, you simply just want to embody what it means to be spiritually awake, and that really is peace of mind, that sort of thing.
Well, and radical forgiveness of anybody that you feel is not wishing you well or is trying to attack you anyway, forgiving them radically and sending them the love vibration, because you realize the more you don't do that, and the more you dwell on how much they've disturbed you or you don't like them, you're poisoning yourself. Because
Well, we got to do a video just on forgiveness, because forgiveness is very misunderstood.
huge. It's huge. Yeah, I think
True forgiveness is the most important thing for people to understand.
I agree totally, because when you're not forgiving and your mind is obsessed, I mean, I went through 3 divorces. And I know what it feels like to go, what happened? You know, it just, you can get obsessed until you learn to let it go completely.
Mhm. Right.
And letting go is so important. And another thing I like about being on the spiritual path, I had a terrible fear of death when I was young. I didn't like to go to funerals. I didn't like to look at even, you know, animals that died. It really upset me. But once you awaken to the realization that you are an eternal being, you get rid of that fear of death.
Well, because you understand death is a transition.
Exactly.
So death is like going into a beautiful mansion, right? And we've been living in the foyer of that
Yeah.
beautiful mansion, and then when you die, you finally open the door to the ballroom.
Right.
That's really what it is. And it's like, whoa, because you're no longer limited by the 3D physical body, right? You're in more of a higher, depends on your vibration, but you're at a plane of expression that is higher than the third. And it's one of the most beautiful experiences somebody can go through.
Exactly. Now, another piece of advice I like to give people if they ask, I don't give out advice unless they want it. But you know, everything that happens to us in this life, be it an illness, a financial problem, a divorce, losing a job, whatever, you can use that if you get above it in your consciousness to that place where you know that it's just another experience to be tested. And the more you can overcome it and free yourself from the downside of it and lift yourself out of it or transform it or whatever, you free yourself from ever having to go through it again, maybe.
Well, and all those life situations or challenges, when you have the desire to awaken, then spirit will use those to trigger you, to purify you. So you have to bring the darkness to the surface.
Right.
And then you have to use your free will to say, okay, I can choose judgment now or forgiveness. What is my attraction point now? Is my attraction point still just an ego body, or is my attraction point my eternal I am self? So, the whole spiritual awakening is an inner shift and to your I am self that changes your attraction point. And so when you're in that self, the things of this world really you don't look at them the same way, because they don't really affect you. They could affect your body, they could affect your personality, but ultimately, when you're completely in alignment with your I am self, you're identified with your eternal spirit, and nothing in this world can touch your spirit.
That's right.
So that's why you're in a space of allowance, because
Yeah.
But that's also your space of protection. That's also your space of manifestation, because when you're vibrating at that I am level or that spiritual level, your vibration's higher. So your ability to manifest is higher. Your health is higher because even your cells in your physical body are vibrating higher. Your aura is more filled with light. So lower attacks that might come your way for whatever reason, basically repelled by energy, because everything's energy, right? So lower energy can never enter higher energy. So if you're resonating at your loving I am self, everything that the ego wanted actually is accomplished when you're doing that. Your health, your abundance, but you're not attached to any of it. See,
Exactly.
the ego attaches to that stuff and identifies with it, but you can have all that stuff while you're aligned with your I am self, but there's no identity with it, right? You attract it, you share it, you elevate other people, you use it for good.
Well, that's one of the secrets to manifesting. You can have whatever your heart desires, as long as you don't get attached to the outcome, because God actually works in strange ways too. You never know how that desire will manifest. But as long as you're aligned with your authentic self, your real self, it'll come in a good way. Ego tends to bring us things that can be a little messy when
Well, that's again part of the whole awakening, because a lot of times when people have that midlife crisis, right? It's like, okay, I'm married, I'm the vice president of my company, I got $1 million in the bank. Why am I not happy? Because the ego will say, always look for greener grass, search but never find. So, because that's what the ego is, it's the thought system of lack, right? It's the opposite of truth, where we are everything. We were given everything in our creation. So it's always telling you to look outside yourself, and you never feel fulfilled because it's the opposite of completion, right? So ultimately, that's why turning within is so important. And when people go through that midlife crisis, they realize, wow, I've been chasing all this stuff and I'm still unhappy. And then at that point, they'll either maybe get, I hate to say it, they might go out and buy more toys like a Corvette or a boat to try and meet that need. They might have an affair with a younger man or woman, whatever, or they turn within, right? And they look for the answers there instead of continuing to look for them on the outside. But there's so much energy coming in now from the galactic galactic cycle that we're in right now, and solar energy coming in, that we're having a mass awakening right now. And a lot of people see that as painful because of everything going on, but it's going to trigger a lot of people to wake up.
It is going to trigger them to wake up. And it's also going to trigger people that are really, really locked into the material 3D world with their five senses to, I mean, I think it's going to cause trauma psychologically.
Well, it is. And that's what the Bible talks about in Revelation, the gnashing of teeth, right? And the whole beast, the beast is the ego. And the gnashing of the teeth is people, the white knuckles is people not wanting to let go. So there's a battle, that battle is an inner battle. And it can get really ugly if that person is so identified with their external world that they can't let go, that, they suffer greatly because of that.
Yeah, it's going to be painful for some, but it's an opportunity, because I guess we've never had such a great opportunity, even though this planet goes through these 25,000 year cycles or something for harvesting people and awakening the next dimension. And we're just in one of those times. So it is a wonderful opportunity because it's there if you want to tap into it.
Absolutely.
All the tools you need are there. The internet is putting out amazing information. I mean, the mystics have been talking about it for eons. So all you have to do is have a passion for wanting to wake up.
Yeah, that's basically it. It all starts with the desire for truth.
Yeah. But it really explains too why the divorce rate is so high in the United States. I mean, if you've got a hole that's empty, no matter how much money you make or how much stuff you have, it'll never be filled. So you can't really be with another person and be present and,
unless you've done your inner work.
Exactly. Then you can be with anybody.
Right.
And enjoy them. I mean, you can be with somebody
or not with anyone.
Exactly. Everybody you're with is interesting once because they've all got a story or something very interesting, and they're all the children of God. There's a spark of God within every one of us. Exactly. So that's what we acknowledge. So yeah, that's very interesting. I'm glad you told your story about what you went through. It's very interesting to me that 3-day thing. Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days. I mean, I spent 3 days walking around in an altered state. You spent 3 days after you surrendered.
Well, 3 days is a sacred base number, right? 3, and then like 3 times 3 is 9. 9 is the number for divinity.
Right.
Right. So 3, Jesus died at age 33. 3 is a very important number.
Tesla said 3, 6, and 9 are very, very, those are the important.
And they're all base 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the 2 triangles that come together form the star tetrahedron, or the Star of David, or the Seal of Solomon. It's when you have the triangle, 3 points You bring them together, representing the masculine and feminine, they form the star tetrahedron, which is perfect balance.
Right.
It
Yeah.
also represents to give and to receive as one. So the masculine polarity is giving, the feminine polarity is receiving. When they come together as one, which is the whole marriage vow, what it truly means, it forms that sacred symbol, which is also the flower of life.
Right. It's also fascinating the way it all fits together, sacred geometry, the teachings of Jesus and all the other masters. It's really I mean, it's all there, but you know, it's in plain sight. But
yeah.
We as humans, because we have these bodies and egos and five senses, we have to work on it in order to see a lot of the things that are out there in there. It's all within.
Yeah, I like your patch.
Yes, this is the glutathione, which I absolutely love. And, you know, I was just watching another video about what they know medically. Glutathione is a very, very important part of our health, our physical health.
Glutathione patch is one of my favorites too. And what people have to realize with those patches, they don't deliver glutathione to the body. Those patches are non-transdermal. All that they're doing is reflecting back the body's own infrared light, and that triggers the glutathione production.
It's fascinating. Oh, and I was listening, you love Edgar Cayce. Well, he was talking, this man who works at ARE down in Virginia Beach, he's been looking at all the Cayce archives for decades. He gave a fascinating talk about how the Atlanteans used crystal for healing.
Oh, yeah. So did the Lemurians.
That's right.
Lemurians, big time.
That's right. And Edgar Cayce knew that. But then, of course, the Atlanteans got into the death rays, which were made out of crystal. They misused it.
And then, well, yeah, the sons of Baal. And,
right.
You know, they ultimately tore their civilization apart. We're actually seeing that energy play out right now. That energy is on the planet. We're playing that out right now. But this time we win. This time we go up an ascension timeline, not a transhuman timeline.
I totally believe that because I feel totally at peace with what's going on. And
yeah, we've made the decision at a collective level. There's been enough of us to have that quantum shift that are resonating at the Christ conscious frequency, and that lifts everybody up. And
these patches just enhance that because I really feel like it's activating the light within my body. And well, it's amplifying. So what crystals do is amplify, right? So we are light, we're energy, and your body's emitting infrared light, which you could see if you had infrared glasses on. So the crystal patches basically are returning that light back into the body. So it's increasing your light quotient in the body, which is very important, very healthy. And your DNA, when your DNA expands, it emits light. Yeah, that's right. And the pineal gland, I understand, has crystals. Has crystals in it. Yeah, and doctors call that brain sand. Right. Yeah, which has electromagnetic properties. But yeah, when you start to resurrect the pineal gland, when you start to do the inner journey within, your pineal starts to resurrect and it starts to vibrate. That's why a lot of people, they think they might have tinnitus. It's not tinnitus when there's ringing in the head. It's actually your pineal gland resurrecting because it's got to resurrect to pick up the higher frequencies coming in to align your body with your consciousness. And that's what ancient alchemy is all about. But that's a whole nother video we'll talk about some other time. There's so many topics and it's so fascinating. I know I went through a period where I had ringing in my ears for a period of time and then it went away. But you're right. It's an activation. Yeah, no question about it. Yeah. Well, this is great. I'm going to put the link below so that if people want to know more about the LifeWave patches, they can go into the website and check it out, or you can leave a comment and we're happy to talk to you about it. Kevin is very, very plugged into what these patches can do, and he's been on them longer than me, so he can give you a lot of information on, like I had a woman ask, can I put them on my eyelids? Well, I didn't really know, but Kevin had the answer for that. If you have an eye problem, I know they've helped people that have what's that thing where you get a coating over your eye? Glaucoma? Cataracts. I read a testimonial where someone, it got rid of their cataracts. Yeah.
Well, it's because of the stem cells. The X39 patch actually triggers the copper peptide in your body to activate and circulate your stem cells back to levels that you had when you're in your 30s. So if you have healthy circulating stem cells, it's going to address everything in your body, make it better.
And the stem cell production decreases as you get older.
When you hit 50, you're at a 90% reduction in stem cells.
Wow. And there are people that have had very, very expensive stem cell treatment using stem cells from embryos, umbilical cords.
Which, again, the patches don't deliver stem cells. The patches just have crystals that trigger your body to produce their own stem cells, which is the best way to do it.
Right, right. Yeah, and the more you use them, I mean, I've only been on them for, well, I got them in March. This is April. So it hasn't been very long, but I'm definitely not going to quit using them because I love them. The way they make me feel more at peace and more energy. I'm getting rid of that problem I've had with my voice, with the, like, what is it called?
Glutathione.
Glutathione, yes. And it's amazing how they have different patches for different things. Like there's one for anxiety, there's one for sleep. But the X39, they call the king of all the patches.
Yep. That's the one. If you're over 50 years old, you should be on that. It should be a part of your health protocol, period. The most important part of your health protocol.
Yeah. And it's
no
so
question about it.
You just, you know, they ship it to you in just a couple of days. I got it, you know, and I already reordered and I'm sharing it with other people and they love it. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. It's great.
All right. Well, that was great, Kevin. I'm so glad we got into spiritual awakening because this is the time. It did start when you think around 2012. Everybody talks about when things started shifting, but nobody really knows for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, the first primary major shift in our lifetime was 1987 during the harmonic convergence.
I remember that. That was huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I would say the next one would be 2012.
Right. Right. Yeah. Interesting times.
All right, Rebecca. Great talking to you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. God bless everybody.